If you wait until the garden centers fill up in May to start your vegetable garden, you have already lost 6 to 8 weeks of growing season that you will never get back. Depression-era farm families could not afford to make this mistake. A late start did not just mean a smaller harvest. It meant the difference between a pantry full of food going into winter and a family going hungry in February. Timing was not a preference. It was survival math, and March was the month that math depended on most heavily. I went through 3 agricultural extension planting calendars from the 1930s, Ohio, Kentucky, and Missouri, cross-referenced against my great-grandmother's planting journal from 1934 to 1938, to identify the specific crops that Depression-era gardeners treated as non-negotiable March plantings. Miss this window, and the entire harvest timeline for the rest of the season shifts backward, often pushing your most productive crops into the brutal heat of late summer, when yields drop and pest pressure peaks. Here are the 10, in the order Depression-era farm calendars listed them. Number 1. Peas. Peas are a cool season crop that actually performs worse in warm soil. The seeds rot before germinating if soil temperature exceeds 75 degrees. Depression-era gardeners planted peas as early as the soil could be worked in March, sometimes pushing seeds into still frosty ground, because peas tolerate frost on the seedling stage far better than they tolerate a late, hot start. The 1932 Uster Home Garden Bulletin specifically noted that peas planted before the last frost date consistently outperformed those planted after it, because the cool germination conditions produced stronger root systems. Miss March, and you may not get a pea harvest worth the bed space at all. Number 2. Spinach. Spinach bolts, sends up a flower stalk and turns bitter once temperatures consistently exceed 75 degrees. A March planting gives you a full 8-week harvest window before that heat arrives. A May planting might give you 3 weeks before the entire crop turns bitter and unusable. My great-grandmother noted in her 1935 journal that the spinach rows planted in early March were still producing in late April, while rows held back until the ground fully warmed had already flowered and were fit for nothing. Number 3. Lettuce. Same logic as spinach. Cool season lettuce planted in March produces tender, sweet leaves for 2 months. Lettuce planted after the soil has already warmed bolts within weeks and never reaches its full size. What most people do not realize is that heat-stressed lettuce also produces bitter compounds in its leaves that no amount of washing or dressing can fix. The window is short and it opens in March. Number 4. Carrots. Carrots need a long, cool growing period to develop full size and sweetness. Frost actually improves their flavor by converting starches to sugar. A March planting gives carrots the 70 to 80 days of cool growth they need before summer heat stunts root development. Depression-era farm calendars treated carrots as one of the least forgiving crops on timing, because a late-planted carrot simply never catches up in size. The 1932 Bulletin documented that home garden carrot yields dropped an average of 40% when planting was delayed past the first week of April. Number 5. Onions. Started from sets or seedlings. Onions are particularly sensitive to day length for bulb formation. The plant needs a certain number of cool, shorter days early in its growth before the lengthening days of late spring trigger bulbing. Planted late, an onion may never form a proper bulb at all, putting all its energy into leaf growth instead. This single timing detail explains why so many home gardeners today end up with onions the size of scallions. Depression-era families understood this through generations of observation. You plant onions in March, or you harvest marbles in July. Number 6. Potatoes. Seed potatoes go in the ground roughly 2 to 4 weeks before the last expected frost, meaning March in most of the continental United States. The plant needs the cool, early growth period to establish a strong root system before the tubers begin forming in earnest. Depression-era families depended on potatoes more than almost any other single crop for caloric density through winter. My great-grandmother's planting journal records the exact potato planting date every single year, not approximately, exactly, because the difference of even 1 week mattered in the final yield. Number 7. Beets. Like carrots, beets need a long, cool growth period for proper root development, and like carrots, frost improves rather than damages the final flavor. A March planting also allows for a second beet planting in midsummer for a fall harvest. A double cropping strategy Depression-era gardeners relied on heavily to maximize food production from a single bed across one growing season. 2 full harvests from the same bed, from a single planting decision made correctly in March. Number 8. Cabbage. Started as transplants. Cabbage is remarkably frost-tolerant once established, and actually develops better flavor and tighter heads in cool conditions. Depression-era families started cabbage seedlings indoors or in a cold frame in late February, specifically so they would be ready to transplant into the garden by mid-March, giving the plant the full cool season it needed before summer heat caused heads to split or bolt. A cabbage started in May simply does not have enough cool weeks left to reach full size before the heat ends its productive life. Number 9. Broccoli. Also started as transplants for the same reason as cabbage. Broccoli that matures during warm weather produces small, loose, bitter heads. And worse, the window between harvestable size and flowering collapses from days to hours in summer heat. Depression-era farm women describe checking broccoli plants every morning during warm weather, rather than every few days the way they did in spring. A March start gives you days to harvest at peak quality. A May start in most climates gives you hours. Number 10. Radishes. Radishes are the fastest maturing crop on this entire list, often ready for harvest in just 25 to 30 days, and a March planting takes full advantage of cool soil that keeps the roots crisp and mildly spicy, rather than woody and aggressively hot, a transformation that happens rapidly once soil temperatures rise. Depression-era gardeners used radishes as the row marker companion crop alongside slower seeds like carrots, marking exactly where the row was before slower seeds emerged. The radishes planted for that purpose in March were also harvested and eaten, a genuinely free bonus crop from a planting that served a second function at a time when nothing in the garden could afford to have only one purpose. Notice what unites all 10 of these. Every single one is a cool season crop whose entire productive window depends on getting into the ground before the soil and air warm up. Depression-era farm families could not afford to lose a crop to bad timing, the way a modern gardener can shrug off a disappointing harvest and simply buy vegetables at the store instead. A failed March planting in 1934 meant a measurable gap in what that family had to eat 8 months later. That pressure is exactly why these planting calendars were followed with such precision. The modern garden centre system, which stocks its shelves most fully in April and May, when the visual appeal of warm weather plants draws the most foot traffic, has no particular incentive to remind you that the most critical planting window of the year has already passed by the time their displays are at their best. The cool season seeds that should have gone in the ground in March are on the same shelf in May, with no indication that the planting date has already come and gone. If your region still has hard frost risk in March, do not let that stop you on the crops listed here. Peas, spinach, lettuce, carrots, onions, potatoes, beets, cabbage, broccoli, and radishes are all frost-tolerant at the seed or young seedling stage. The crops you genuinely need to wait on are the warm season vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, corn, which Depression-era calendars consistently scheduled for late April through May. Planting those early does not help you. Planting these 10 late costs you the harvest. Check your specific last frost date. Work backward 4 to 6 weeks for the transplant-started crops on this list, and get seed in the ground for the direct sown ones the moment your soil can be worked. This single timing discipline is responsible for more of the difference between a thin harvest and an abundant one than any fertilizer or pest treatment covered elsewhere on this channel. If you want the exact regional planting windows adjusted for your specific frost zone, subscribe and comment your location. We are building out a full regional planting calendar series. New video every single day. And if you know someone who always seems to start their garden too late and wonders why their harvest disappoints every year, send them this before March ends. The window is still open, but not for long.